Spring Boot. Right? What is Spring Boot? See, we started our course, if you see here, we started our course with Spring Core. We started with our course Spring Core, which uses IOC and dependency injection. Inversion of control and dependency injection. Right? And then we have seen like Spring Core, this is the fundamental concept. Then we have seen Spring MVC. Then we have seen Spring REST. Right? And of course, though we have seen like kind of Hibernate also. Hibernate with database integration. Right? Actually, Hibernate is not part of Spring, but it has a compatible Spring where your Spring MVC or Spring REST uses Hibernate and connect to the database. Right? Hibernate is a ORM library. Object relational mapping. Then what is Spring Boot then? Many people will think that Spring Boot is an alternative to all this. Many people will think that Spring Boot is alternative to Spring MVC, Spring REST, right? Hibernate, all, etc. Okay. But this is wrong. This is wrong. Spring Boot will still use this. Will still use this. Spring Boot still uses Spring MVC, Spring REST. Okay. Okay, Hibernate. Okay, all. But the advantage is, similarly, it will also use Spring Security for security part, right? And then, so it will use this and makes application development faster. Application development faster. That means, see, generally, if you take to develop a normal web application, using Spring MVC and Hibernate, say we take 6 weeks of effort. Say we take 6 weeks of effort. right? Now, if we use Spring Boot, okay, along with Spring MVC, Spring Boot, see, Spring Boot is not replacing Spring MVC or Hibernate. Okay, Spring Boot still uses them. If you use Spring Boot plus Spring MVC plus Hibernate, we can develop in 4 weeks of effort. That means 2 weeks. That means 2 weeks is saved. 2 weeks effort is saved. So that means 25 to 30%. We can say 25 to 35% of effort is saved when we use Spring Boot. So 25 to 35% of effort is saved when we use Spring Boot, right? And what is the magic? See, Spring Boot still uses this one. It is not like that Spring Boot is replacing Spring MVC and all that. No. That is the reason I was telling you before going to Spring Boot, I was telling you the Spring MVC, Spring REST and all that, because it is not like that. If we want to know Spring Boot means we don't want to learn like this. No. Spring Boot still uses this MVC and REST, but makes the development effort faster. If we don't use Spring Boot and develop in a normal way, I mean, the one which we have seen earlier, it will take some more effort, but 25 to 35% of effort is saved when we use Spring Boot and develop these things. What is the magic Spring Boot is doing? Okay. What is the magic? Spring Boot is doing. Okay. So mainly there are three features. If they ask anyone asking interview questions also, you can tell mainly 3 features, Spring Boot. Starter packs, auto configuration, and then inbuilt Tomcat server. You know, because of these features, Spring Boot is making, okay, because of this. So because of these features, these 3 features, Spring Boot is making application development faster. And how this will solve, I'll tell you. Okay. So because of these features, 3 features, Spring Boot is making application development faster. And you know, because of this, so because of since we are able to develop applications faster, where 25 to 35% of effort is saved when we use Spring Boot. Without Spring Boot, 25 to 35% of effort will be added. So that's why Spring Boot is very latest. I mean, Spring Boot is very important. Spring Boot is trending and important technology used in projects nowadays. Now, if you're a Java person, you should know Spring. Spring is compulsory. If you know Spring Boot is compulsory nowadays. Because Spring Boot, you know, 80% of projects, 80% of industry projects are using Spring Boot. 80% of industry projects which are Java related or using Spring. Remember that much. If you put Spring Boot in your resume, okay, you'll get a number of interview calls. That much demand Spring Boot is having. Okay, so why means because of these powerful features. I'll tell you these features. Okay, so that much demand your Spring, because you can save this effort. See, every project will be looking for faster development of the project. So when they develop the project faster, the project will be moved to the in production quickly, and thereby you can see the results of that project. Okay, everything, money will be saved, everything will be saved. Okay, so for example, now I'll tell you what are the different parts of application development. Let us take with only Spring MVC. With Spring MVC, we are not using no Spring Boot, no Spring Boot. With Spring MVC, REST, Spring REST, and then Hibernate. Okay, no Spring Boot with Spring MVC application development. What are the different stages? I'll open my project. You have seen in the last. Know about Elon. Okay. So if I go to this project, if you see, we have defined a web.xml, right? So first step is configurations. Yeah, before configurations, I'll tell you. First step is pom.xml. In pom.xml, we'll add all these dependencies, right? In pom.xml, we add all the dependencies related to Spring, Servlet, Hibernate, JSP, etc. All right. All this, right? So all these dependencies we add. Spring Web MVC, okay, Spring MVC, okay, Spring MVC, Spring Web Servlet, JSP, Hibernate, Spring ORM, like everything there, right? So in pom.xml, we add all the dependencies related to Spring MVC and Servlet Hibernate. This is the first step. Next, what is the second step? See, what is the second step? So we add web.xml, right? If you go to web.xml, we add all this URL patterns, dispatcher servlet. I told you, right? URL pattern. I told you, right? This one? URL pattern, dispatcher servlet, mapping. Are you able to hear me, everyone? Okay, fine. So we add web.xml, dispatcher servlet mapping, and then what we do then? Then we add this this dispatch servlet configuration, right? Component scan. We configure this JSPs, right? Then we add servlet configurations, MVC, sorry, dispatch servlet configurations. Configurations like this one, context component scan, right? Next is like context component scan. Next, internal resource view resolver, right? We all do this one, right? Next, what we'll do after this, in pom.xml, we add web.xml, we add this one. Next is this one, right? Our business logic, right? In the controller class, right? Next is this one, right? Our controller class, your business logic. Business logic. Like REST controller class, controller or REST controller. Next service class. Next repository class. So all this we are going to see, right? Right? Next, what is the next one? Once we write all the business logic, then what we do? We build the project into WAR file using Maven, right? Using Maven. Next, what we do? We set up Tomcat server, right? And then copy this WAR file to Tomcat server and run the application or run the project. Any doubts till now here? Whatever we studied till now, everyone clear this part? We have studied in the real-time project for all this. Right? We build the project. We build the project into WAR file using Maven. That's what we have done, right? If you see here, I built this project, run as Maven install. The project gets generated, right? I'll get a target WAR file. You see this WAR file. This WAR I copy to Tomcat server, right? Any doubts in these steps? Any doubts? Right? Now, okay. Okay, this I have to add one more point here. Along with version numbers. Along with versions. What do you mean by these versions? If you see here, in pom.xml, for a web MVC, I have version 5.3.3. Right? For Spring Web, I have 5.3.3 version. For Servlet API, I have 2.5 version. Right? These versions also I have to put, right? 2.1 version, 1.2 version for all of it. That's what along dependencies along with versions. Now this is where without using Spring Boot, no Spring Boot. No Spring Boot. With Spring MVC, Hibernate, we do all this. This is what we studied in the last project. Now, when we start now using Spring Boot, application development with Spring Boot. Okay. This step will follow the same steps, but now we'll see this step. This will be simplified. In pom.xml, we add starter packs. I'll tell you what is the starter pack. Okay, this one. I told it Spring Boot feature starter pack. We'll add the starter pack. Now, in what way? So this will save a lot of time. I'll tell you. See, without Spring Boot, I'm setting now dependencies. I have to use this version, this version, this version. How do you know this version is working with this version? Servlet 2.5 version is working with 5.3.3 web version. 2.1 version is working with 2.5 version. Okay, we used to spend a lot of time here. I mean, before Spring Boot came into the picture, we used to spend a lot of time in setting up the versions between the dependencies in pom.xml. We used to spend a lot of time. That means, say, if you see here, Hibernate 5.4.27 should work with Hibernate 5.4.27 version should work with Spring Web MVC 5.3.3 version. Spring Web MVC 5.3.3 version. And how do we do? We test a lot of thoroughly. First time developers, they find difficult. Which version is compatible with which version? So, suppose some new developers, what they do, instead of using a 5.4, they use some 4 version. And this 4 version might not be compatible with Spring Web MVC 5.3. And when you run the project, you'll get errors, different errors. Okay, because of these versions, setting up the proper versions only, we spend a lot of time. We used to spend a lot of time. That means this library version should be compatible with this version. Okay. Similarly, this Servlet 2.5 version should be compatible with this version. So like that, resolving the versions itself will take a lot of time. And that will consume our lot of development effort. A new developer, when they want to set up a pom.xml like this, means he has to struggle with these versions. We should know this version should be compatible with this version, because whatever the dependencies that I specify, each dependency should work together. They should work together. Okay, if one version is not if one version of one library is not matching with the other version, they'll not work together. So we spend a lot of time in setting up these versions actually. Okay, and almost like in say 6 weeks of effort, 1 week will go only in setting up a new person. I'm telling a new person. So those who get practice, then he will be remembering which version will be using this one, which will be compatible to which version. But a new person will spend at least 3 to 4 days of time in making this work, in setting up proper versions. Okay. So before Spring Boot has come into the picture. Now with starter pack concept in Spring Boot, this issue got solved. I'll tell you what is the starter pack. Okay. Okay. So for this version management only, for this version management pom.xml only, new person takes, say, some 3 to 4 days at least to set it up and properly working. To set it up and properly working, right? And an experienced person, even an experienced person also might do some mistake. Suppose if he enters a wrong version here, that might not work with this library. Together, all these libraries should work together for a project. That means they should be compatible with their versions. So this version should be agreed by this version. This version should be agreed by this version. They should be compatible. If there is any mismatch in the version, we used to struggle a lot in setting up these pom.xml dependencies. But with Spring Boot, that issue got solved. Now it becomes easy, just within fraction of minutes. I'll show you how. Just within fraction of minutes, we can generate this pom.xml automatically. We don't need to set up the versions like this 2.1, 1.2. Automatically Spring Boot will generate for you. Okay, your life becomes easy. I'll show you that when I explain you the practical example. Your life becomes easy. Okay, so with starter packs, I'll tell you what is the starter pack. Okay, Spring Boot solves with starter pack. Spring Boot solves the pom.xml dependency versions. So Spring Boot solves the pom.xml. Spring Boot solves the pom.xml dependency versions with starter pack. How it will solve, I'll tell you. Okay. Now whatever the new developer spends some 5 days of effort or 4 days of effort, with this he'll be able to set up just within 15 to 10 to 15 minutes only. See, 3 days or 4 days of effort, he can do now in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Okay. So that is what starter packs. I'll tell you what is the starter packs. Okay. Next, if you see the second point, we add web.xml, URL pattern, right? We add dispatcher servlet configurations like this. See, these 2 and 3 points itself, a new person will take at least 4 to 5 days of time to write these configurations, or 3 to 4 days of time to write these configurations. Of course, if you copy paste it, we cannot do. But if you want to write the new configurations, separate files, suppose if you get some errors here, so to set up these configurations itself, he will take some 3 to 4 days of time. Okay. With Spring Boot, this has become easy now. So with Spring Boot, we don't need separate web.xml. We don't need separate this dispatcher servlet configuration. Okay. So when we use Spring Boot, we don't need separate web.xml, separate dispatcher servlet configuration. Okay, dispatcher servlet configuration. That means this XML, whatever this XML is, right? This XML. We don't need separately this. All will be taken care by Spring Boot. And that is what auto configuration, this one. So Spring Boot has a powerful feature called auto configuration. So Spring Boot with its auto configuration manages all this. All this. Okay. So whatever, you don't need separate files. You don't need to spend time to write separate web.xml, separate this dispatcher servlet XML. You don't need to write all this. So Spring Boot will manage with all this auto configuration. I'll tell you what is this auto configuration and all that. Now I'm telling what is the difference between a non-Spring Boot application and how a Spring Boot is solving all this. But we will go to each and every concept, starter packs, auto configuration, okay, all that. So we don't need to create separate web.xml, separate dispatcher servlet configuration. So Spring Boot with its auto configuration manages all this. Okay. The next one. This is required. This you cannot avoid because this is a business logic, right? Even if you use Spring Boot or even if you don't use Spring Boot, this is compulsory. So this is where you spend effort. So this will be same. Okay, because this is business logic. So this is where you spend effort in Spring Boot also. See, whatever I told you, 6 weeks of effort will be reduced to 4 weeks of effort. So that 4 weeks you will be writing this one only. The 2 weeks which you are spending in this pom.xml, okay, this configurations, okay, which you are spending here in pom.xml, this web.xml, these configurations, that will be saved. But business logic you have to write. Okay, this will be same in non-Spring Boot and Spring Boot. That means you have to use same REST controller, service class, repository, everything, right? And this build the project also. This is building the project also, right? Now, the next one will be we set up Tomcat server, separate Tomcat server. But you know, Spring Boot comes up with inbuilt Tomcat server. If you see here, Spring Boot comes up with inbuilt Tomcat server. So that means if we have, so as Spring Boot comes up with inbuilt Tomcat server, we don't need to spend time in setting up separate Tomcat server. So here also the time is saved, right? We don't need to spend separate time in setting up separate Tomcat servers. If you see in our earlier examples, we have set up a Tomcat server separately. We deployed that, we stopped. But with Spring Boot comes up with, okay, Spring Boot comes up with inbuilt Tomcat server, okay, and we don't need separate Tomcat server to spend. So here also we'll save the effort. Only effort we spend in Spring Boot is the business logic. So this is same as in your normal non-Spring Boot application and a Spring Boot application, but we can save the other efforts, the configuration efforts, the separate Tomcat effort, and this pom.xml version efforts, version management. So in that way, 25 to 30% of the efforts self-solved. So Spring Boot solves version management in pom.xml or Spring Boot reduces, we can say. Spring Boot reduces effort of setting up dependency versions, setting up dependencies and versions in pom.xml with its starter pack features. With its starter pack features. Next, Spring Boot reduces, okay, or eliminates web.xml, dispatcher servlet, configuration XML, right? And all that, and manages through auto configuration, reduces or eliminates setting up or write or implementing web.xml dispatcher configuration, manages through auto configuration. Right? Next. Next one is, what is next one? So no need of effort. No effort for spending. No effort for setting up. It's setting up separate Tomcat server as Spring Boot comes up with inbuilt Tomcat server. And when we start the Spring Boot application, Tomcat automatically gets started. So this reduces Tomcat setup time and deployment time. Everyone clear till now? Everyone clear, right? Right. Now you know. I'll explain you these concepts in tomorrow's class. What is this starter pack? Okay. What is this auto configuration? What is this inbuilt Tomcat server? I'll explain you this in tomorrow's class. But now what I will do is, I will show you now quickly creating a Spring Boot project, how easy you will feel. Okay, I'll show you, just see. See, a starting Spring Boot project, can be created quickly using Spring Initializer. Okay, I'll tell you what is this Spring Initializer. So a Spring Boot project can be created quickly. You'll feel how easy it is actually. A Spring Boot project can be created quickly using Spring Initializer. Okay. Suppose I'll just show you. Okay. I just typed Spring Initializer. You just click on this. See, you are getting a link like this. See. So from this, you can create a Spring Boot project very easily. So you can start creating Spring Boot project. Okay. So what I'll do is, my project is a Maven project, right? Mine is a Maven project. I'll select Maven. My language is Java. I'll select Java language. Spring Boot version, this is the latest version, 3.0.5. This is the latest version. I can go with 2.7.10 also. This is also just a recent version only. 3.0.5 latest version. Okay. So Spring Boot version, I selected 2.7.10. Project is Maven. Language is Java. Now I'll give project metadata. I have to give the group ID and all that, right? This is required for your Maven pom.xml. If you go to your pom.xml, you'll be having a group ID, artifact ID, packaging, right? So these I will be giving. Okay, these, what is group ID, what is artifact ID, what is packaging. Okay, I'll give that. So let me give like this, Spring Boot. I'll give group ID as Spring Boot Demo 1. Artifact ID also Spring Boot Demo 1. Package I'll give com.Spring Boot Demo 1. Right. I see the latest version of Java, I can use 20, 17, 11, 8. So 17, I can select 17 standard. 17, 11 or 8. Your Java version can be your 8, 11 or 17. 17 will work with this 2.7.10. Your Java 8 version will work with the 2.51, Spring Boot 2.5 and all that. So let us use 17 version here, right? Now coming to this section, add dependencies. Now I'm building now one simple RESTful web service, right? So now click on add dependencies. I want to add web dependencies. Just type web. Now you'll get Spring Web like this, which is used for building web, including RESTful applications using Spring MVC, uses Apache Tomcat as the default embedded container or server, right? Now I just select this. Okay? In add dependencies, I selected this. Now, I filled up all the details, right? Maven I selected here, Spring Boot version I selected here, your group ID, artifact ID, and package required for your pom.xml I selected here. Jar is the packaging. When I build it, it should be jar, not war file, jar. And your Java version, I'm selecting 17. And I clicked on dependencies. In this, I see like that we can add many dependencies. I'll show you another dependency also. We can add Hibernate also, which comes with Spring Data JPA. So persist data in SQL stores with the Java persistence API using Spring Data and Hibernate. I can select this also, but now I'm not using Hibernate, only I'm using WebMVC. So I'll just remove this. So now, what I do? I just click on generate. Now it will generate a zip folder for you. Click on generate. Now see a zip folder is generated. You see? Now let me go to this zip folder. Right. And just I extract this folder. See this zip folder. I'll extract this folder. I zip folder to a project. Okay. This to a folder. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my Maven, my Eclipse. I import this as a Maven project. Already the project is created, file import. Now you can do changes on this. So next, browse. I select Spring Boot Demo 1, select folder, click on finish. Okay. Now you see the Spring Boot Demo 1 got generated. You see, I mean, that project got imported. You see, if I open this pom.xml, see automatically these dependencies are generated for you. Just I added here in the dependencies only web actually. Only web I added. Okay. So automatically see when I click on generate, this got generated zip folder, you got a default project structure. In your pom.xml, right? You got group ID as Spring Boot Demo 1, right? The same thing I have entered here. Whatever I entered, it came. Artifact as Spring Boot Demo 1. Your package name as com.Spring Boot Demo 1. Okay. I selected JDK 17. Java 17 has come. And now you see, I added dependencies web here. So this web dependency has come. If you see, there is a starter here. Starter. This is called starter pack, I was telling you. I'll tell you what is this starter pack in tomorrow's class. What is this starter pack? So if you see here, I can see starter. I can see starter here. Okay. Automatically, this pom.xml has generated for me. Okay. Now, very simple. See how easy it is, I'll tell you. Just go to here. Okay. I got one class also got generated here with an annotation called @Spring Boot application. I'll tell you what is this also tomorrow. Okay. This is a very powerful annotation. And now what I'll do, I'll just see, take your MVC REST API. What is your REST API? Copy that controller here. That's all. Let me now take students controller, student.java, address.java. Copy all these three here. That's all. Now, no need of separate Tomcat. Just run this program now. Run as Java application. Just This is a main method, just run as Java application. Now you see, Spring Boot is starting its own Tomcat server. There is no separate Tomcat server. I did not deploy it. Just I run this application. Now just click on localhost, invoke this URL, student, okay, localhost 8080/student. See how quickly I got the response. See how quickly I developed this project. Of course, these three classes are already existing. I copy pasted it. Otherwise, I have to write these classes. This is your business logic. But I did not spend time in setting up this pom.xml. I did not spend, see, there is no web.xml also. If you see here, if you see here, see, I spent here, there is a web.xml spring MVC config.xml, right? Here, I did not use any XML. Here, I did not use any XML. See, there is no XML also. Your pom.xml is automatically generated for you from this portal. And no separate Tomcat server. Directly, if I run this application, the Tomcat server got started. And there is no separate files. I did not spend time in writing web.xml, the other XML, which I spent the time in writing. That all not there, you see. Just only the business logic, that's all. This one. I mean, for this example. And I just quickly executed it. I got this response. You see, JSON response. The same response which I have showed you in the other Spring Boot, in the other Spring REST project. Now you see how easy, how quickly you developed it. Just select these things, add that required dependency. It will generate a project for you. Just import that project in your Eclipse and just create your own controller class. That's all. Done. Now you are feeling how easy Spring Boot now? Development wise. Right? Everyone is feeling easy, Spring Boot. Yes, we did not spend time in writing this pom.xml. Right? And we did not spend writing in web.xml. We did not spend writing, setting up separate Tomcat server. Only thing is, we have to write this control. This is your business logic. We cannot avoid this. This is as part of your requirement. Okay? So already the project, if you generate the project like this, automatically most of the things will be auto-generated. That your pom.xml got generated, right? This main program, this also got generated. Okay, if I run this program, it will start the Tomcat server. And tomorrow I'm going to explain you what are the starter packs, what is this annotation, and this annotation includes this part. Whatever I told, auto configuration, right? This one, this auto configuration. So because of this, you don't need to have separate XML files. Okay, when we use Spring Boot, we don't need separate web.xml, separate dispatch alert. Spring Boot with its auto manages all this. So auto configuration comes in this annotation. Tomorrow I'm going to tell you. Any doubts till now?